Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we're working on Project Black Pearl yet again. We're continuing our series where we are refreshing the brakes on this car, front and back. This is part 2, and we're going to be pulling the brake calipers off to install an ATE rebuild kit. Really, all that is going to be our actual seal to the piston and our dust boot. But it's going to be an important part of our overall upgrade to the brakes, where we're trying to get everything operating just like it did when it rolled off of the factory floor. Our first step is we have to get the brake calipers off the car. Let's go get them. Starting with our front calipers, we're going to go ahead and pull our retainer spring off, and we're going to just expand the caliper a tiny bit. See, I don't want to damage my sensor. Let me pull that out with a pry bar here. This should be relatively easy because right now we actually have the brake hose disconnected for our brake hose replacement, which means I'm squirting brake fluid everywhere. With the caliper and the pads loosened up just a little bit, we can move to the inside, and we're going to be pulling the caliper bolts off of the brackets rather than pulling the caliper from the bracket, and we'll just take it off as a unit. These are 18mm heads. And your top bolt is the short one, bottom bolt is the long one. Now this whole assembly can come off and go over to the workbench. You can tell the rotors are a little rusty. Last time this car had anything done was a car wash, and then it was parked for the last couple weeks. We repeated that process on the other side. Now in the back, we're about the same. We're going to pop our spring clip off, just push in and pry out. It'll come off. I'm going to open the caliper up just a smidge, and then this time, using a 16mm, pull off our brackets back here. Bingo bango! With our calipers and brackets on the workbench, we can start breaking these down a little bit further by pulling our brake lines off. Now would be a fantastic time for a brake line replacement or upgrade, which is what I'm doing as well. I'm actually going to be cutting these brake lines up and then using the fittings to seal off my ports for when I powder coat these guys. If you want to see the powder coating video, take a look down in the description. I've got all 4 videos linked in all 4 videos. So you've got brake line, stainless steel line replacement, caliper rebuild, powder coating, and then how to flush the brakes after a job like this. These rear calipers look like they might have been painted or something at some point. So we'll see if I have to strip all that off. Whoop, a lot of brake fluid in that one. You can just squeeze the brake fluid out. Caliper brackets will just fall right off. You push, they'll slide. Next, I'll go ahead and just pull all the brake pads out. I'm going to want to clean all these up. Looks like previous owner used silicone on these. That's awesome. Brake pads have a lot of life left in them, so there's no sense in replacing them just yet. I mean, you totally could. Wow. This rear slide did not want to come out. These slide pins need to be cleaned and lubed when you're changing your brakes. Otherwise, the caliper isn't going to slide and float like it's supposed to. This pad, completely glued on here. Yeah, not how that's supposed to be. These are floating calipers and pads.
Wow, look at that.
Oh, that's too much. Maybe I should use an actual hammer. There we go. Yeah, check that out. That's glued on there with silicone. Don't do that. There's even silicone inside of our piston. Wow. This one doesn't want to slide either. Before everything goes back together, I'm going to clean up the edges of these pads. I'll chamfer them a little bit. Make sure I don't get a bunch of squeaks when this comes back on the road. Now is also a great time to replace your slide guide bushings. These are rubber, but mine are in good shape. I will be cleaning them, and also make sure that you have your little guide pin caps or dust caps to help keep them clean. Everything's just going to go in a bucket so I don't lose it. And I'm going to go ahead and pull mine out because, well, we're going to be powder coating these in our other episode. With everything a little bit cleaned up, now we need to go ahead and get our pistons and our seals out. The easiest way to do that is with a little bit of compressed air. You're going to want to block the inside of the piston here. And then I've got this calibrated leak because I've dropped this too many times. We're just going to apply a little air on this side. You can see it's already pushing it out. And by having a stopper here, you're not going to shoot this across, damage it, or hurt yourself in the process. A block of wood or a brake pad could work. I like the adjustability here so that I can just do this slowly. You can see right there, we just broke our seal, and our piston can slide out nicely. That piston is in fantastic shape. All right, I'm pretty happy about that. Ooh, it's got a pretty rigid cap on it. The inside of our caliper looks nice as well. Piston's in great shape too. Whoa, 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 whoa. A lot of brake fluid left in that one. How's the lens? Nothing on there? This one is going to need some polishing for sure. But otherwise is in pretty decent shape. Yeah, that piston's going to need some polishing too. Way more brake fluid. Oh, that's gross. This is what it looks like when the maintenance isn't kept up to date. There is a bunch of crud down in here. Look at all that goo down in the bottom of this caliper. That is what happens when old brake fluid sits in there with moisture and contamination for too long. Even the bleeder screws have some contamination, rust on them. Everything's gonna go in the ultrasonic cleaner now. So yes, my water in my ultrasonic is already pretty dirty. That's because I've been cleaning other stuff in it. I'm waiting for my temp to get up to 50 degrees, but I'll go ahead and throw my stuff in there. If you've never used an ultrasonic cleaner, it's pretty cool. I've only used this one like 3 times so far since I got it, and I'm pretty excited about the cleaning action that it has. I just have some oil eater in here as my solvent and water. On she goes. Okay, I've run this for, I believe, 45 minutes now. I did 3 15-minute cycles. The water is 53 degrees Celsius right now, which is hot. I'm going to be careful. Definitely cleaner than it was. Oh yeah, that one's definitely much cleaner. Even the brackets are pretty nice. Well, everything looks much better than it did. Not perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and hose all of this stuff off. Well, hot dog, hosing these things off sure did make them look nice. Ooh, red hose water. Nice. Well, you know how this happened. You got to take a look at my powder coating video. I've got all 4 videos linked down below. While I was prepping them for powder coat, I did a couple of things to our pistons. I cleaned the inside bore where the caliper piston goes with a brass brush or brass wire wheel on a Dremel. And then on the front calipers, the steel was a bit corroded, so I used a die grinder with a flap disc with 4/0 fine 4/0 fine steel wool. So I spun that at high speed inside the bores to help clean them up, and then I hit them with the brass brush. And then If you're looking at your calipers and you look down inside the opening for the brake line, you might notice a ton of casting flash inside of there, little stalactite things. I took all of that out with a Dremel and a burr bit, and I cleaned out the bores and smoothed everything out inside there, and they look great now. The pistons themselves, the front pistons, were not in the best shape, but they weren't throwawayable at this stage. So what I did was I started with fine steel wool, and then I went to 1000 grit, 2000 grit, and 3000 grit sandpaper, and I just buffed my way around there. And you can see they came out pretty good. Even the bottom area that was pretty heavily corroded on both of these came out really nicely. So now they go into the bores nice and smooth. I didn't take any material off of them, and they're ready to go. The rear caliper pistons were in fantastic shape. They have some sort of coating on them. They go in really nice as long as you get them straight, and they drop right in there. So now we can go ahead and start our reassembly here. We've got our new seals and our new piston seal and our new dust boots. We're going to be putting our piston seal in first, and I'm going to put it into the bore dry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lube it. Let's see, got to make sure we don't rotate this guy in there. So if you look right here, you can see how it's trying to rotate on me. There we go, now I've got it clamped in there straight. We're going to want to use your eyeballs and walk all the way around. It's really easy for this piston seal to have a rotation in it like that and still be in there. So use your finger, use your eyes, make sure everything is nice and smooth. Then we're going to be putting our dust seal on the piston first. And inside the bore, we're going to lube the bore with fresh brake fluid. So I got a clean container here, I got a brand new bottle of brake fluid. I went with a gallon because it was the best value, and knowing that I'm going to have air in the system, I wanted enough to be able to flush it a couple of times. I'm just going to pour a little into my jar here. When I used to work in the shop, I'd go through gallon after gallon after gallon, and I didn't really have to worry about brake fluid sitting around for very long. But now that I don't use it as fast, I always write the date on my container that it was opened. Technically, once you open brake fluid, you shouldn't use it anymore after that because it's contaminated. It's contaminated in the car. The reservoir is vented to atmosphere, so I use it for a while. I just try to look at that date and make a judgment call on what I'm going to do there. We're just going to take a little bit of fluid. I'm actually going to run my finger all around the bore inside here. Just like if you were installing a piston in a block, you want everything lubed up so it's going to slide nicely. Let's go ahead and get our seal on here. Make sure you put it on the right direction. This gets much more difficult to put on once it's in there. Mainly for the front pistons, they have this ring that drops in. That's a real pain in the butt. The rears should just slide right over, but matter of practice, it's easier to do it this way. So we're just going to work our piston. There it is. Okay. As we slide our piston in, our groove is going to seat on the front there. Then we want to work our seal onto our caliper from the harder side first, which would be this top side here that's difficult to get to, and then work our way around to the bottom there. And then just visually go all the way around, double checking. I've got a nice blunt punch here I'm going to use to push it in on the top. It's fighting me just a little bit. Now I want to push my piston out to double check that my seal dropped in all the way. To do that, I'm just going to use a little bit of air. Where my seat is for my line and the seat for my bleeder screws, I cleaned those up with words aren't coming out this morning. A brass wire wheel on my Dremel as well. Yep, see here, our seat on our piston didn't grab. It's sitting back. There we go. That's what I was looking for there. Now you can see we're seated in, we're seated on the bottom. I will work this bottom one just a little bit more. Try to get it as flush as possible. It can take a few tries pushing it on there. Man, those rear piston seals, they are a real pain in the butt. I wound up cutting one of the boots off and then using the seal ring with the metal ring inside of it as my buffer as I was forcing my way around there. Initially, I thought I had that first one all the way on, and then I'm glad I tested, but I shot some air through there, blew the piston to the end of its travel, and the boot popped right off. So I had to retry again, and you can see there's definitely a metal ring inside here that allows it to hold its shape, and you got to really work to get this all the way around that seal surface. Otherwise, only 2/3 of it will be on there, and the part up here where you can't really see what's going on, that'll be what's not on there. But they're both on there now. For the fronts, it's got a totally different dust boot. This dust boot has this little ridge right here that fits into the caliper, has a little ridge as well. So we need to get our seal in. We need to get this guy lubed up inside here. Same thing with this seal, we want to make sure that it doesn't wind up rolling in there. The instructions from ATE say to put the boot on the piston first and then try to drop it into the groove there. I'm wondering if putting the boot in first and then putting the piston on will be easier. I'm not sure, but what I'll do is I'll do it the ATE way first, because this boot is tight on here. So we'll push it a little extra far, and we'll turn around and bring it back the other direction to try to pull that lip over the edge, like this. And the directions say to get the boot in here first, because, well, you can't see it, just like the rears. So I'm looking in there, drop it in. We'll drop the top side in here. Then I'm going to spin it so it feels like it's all the way in there. That's good. Got my little plastic syringe of brake fluid on the piston to let it slide easier. Okay, so far so good. When I pull on it, it's staying engaged. So now we should be able to just slowly work our piston into the seal. There we go, just wiggle it in. I believe that one's seated pretty nicely. I'm going to do the same thing with these that I did with the fronts. I'm going to hit them with some air to push them out just to make sure all my little seating surfaces are in there. There we go. And I can also see that we're seated all the way around at the top of the boot there. With our pistons and our seals all taken together, we need to get our guide boots back in. And I've cleaned these up pretty good. They look nice. They got good flexibility to them still. So I'm going to be inserting some of this lithium-based soap, True Glide from Worth, into the end of each one of these. This is what our caliper slide pins are going to slide on. And inside your boot, there's little grooves where the grease can go. So I'm just going to take the end of this Q-tip, work it around into those grooves. That way when I put my slide pin in, I don't just push it all out. Obviously, if you're doing all this work like a regular brake job on the car, lube up your slide pins, put them in there, and roll it. I'm only going this extra step because we're here at this stage. I'm going to assemble my calipers and my brackets together here on the workbench and then install them on the car all in one piece as well. Now to get these in, we're basically just going to pinch them and push through. They'll slide through. You can put some lube on them if they're a little sticky, which I think I will, just a tiny bit. Well, this is take like 6 because I keep running into issues, missteps, brain farts, those types of things. You haven't seen any of that, but that's okay. We're going to start fresh right here. So we're going to load our caliper and our bracket up on the bench. To do that, we need to install our slide pins. The slide pins are a torque of 30 Newton meters. If you look closely here, you can see a little bit of anti-seize right there, and a little bit right there, and right there. That's where I was just loading up the calipers previously. Now we're going to go ahead and do it for real this time because I'm paying attention to what's going on. We're going to start by putting our bracket in the caliper. So you should just be able to slide it in. Our pin boots are nice and lubed up now. Bingo bango. Then we're going to take our inside pad, and if you're using factory pads, there could be an L and an R on the left and right pads. Pay attention to that. These are Jurid, which is an OEM supplier, but they're aftermarket and they don't say L or R. We've lubed up the piston ring area, and we've lubed where the pad itself makes contact across the side and the bottom. Then we're going to carefully drop her in and make sure that we line up our spring, pull our bracket out just a little, up and over the pad, and then pop it together. Double check that you don't have anti-seize all over your hands like I do, because you know that stuff's going to go everywhere. It's already over my calipers. Okay, now our outside pad, we're going to lube the 2 contact points, the edge, and a little bit where the caliper ears touch. These are all anti-friction points, and then we just drop it in like that. This caliper is ready to go on the car now. So we need 1 long bolt and 1 short bolt for the front, and these are going to get torqued to 110 Newton meters. I'm going to go ahead and load up my other calipers, and then we'll get these installed. So this will make more sense now why we built the caliper as a loaded unit, because we can just take the whole thing, slide it over our disc, and we're solid. We'll take our bolts, get them in from behind. Remember, you got your short one on the bottom, or short one on the top, long one on the bottom. Got the spring bracket ready to go. Wrong way. I know, that's not torqued. It will be. Remember, these take a ton of torque, 110 Newton meters. There's 1, 2. On our spring clip, we put just a tiny bit of anti-seize here, on those 2 points, and on the outside points. We're going to take it, make a mess, slide it in, and now our caliper is torqued, loaded, and ready for the brake line. Let's get to the rear, get the rear caliper on. Okay, we're dealing with the same thing out back. Something I should have mentioned is your bleeder screw. There goes my torque wrench again. Your bleeder screw needs to be oriented up. If you put your calipers on the wrong side somehow, the bleeder screw will be on the bottom. I'm not sure that's even possible, but don't. Bleeder screw goes up. That way the air can get out. Slide it over. We got 2 of the same size bolts in the rear. Make sure you drop your socket at least 3 times. Alrighty. Now we got to put our caps in. Pop. And pop. There we go. Last step, make sure you reinstall your brake pad sensor. I'm gonna leave this off because I have to obviously install the lines and bleed it still. Woo-wee, those look good. Okay, so let's wrap this up. It was a pretty simple project, albeit there are a lot of components that I didn't cover in this episode, like the powder coat, the brake lines, or the flush. Those 3 episodes down below. Take a look at those videos, see what information you need out of them. This did, however, take care of another thing on my list. Just because of the mileage and the age of the car, caliper rebuilds are an important item to consider. So, bingo bango, we've got those checked off the box. And let's talk about how much this cost us. The rebuild kit with tacks for the front and rear was right around 50 bucks, and that brings my total up to $4,821.40. We're starting to make great progress on this car, and if you're looking for the video on how I powder coat it, take a look up over here. Brake lines up over here, brake flush down in the description. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. If you made it this far, really appreciate it.